demonstrate it's because I was a college football quarterback that I'm limping today, having had a knee operation about 5 days ago. So these doctors can do modern wonders. Let me say how delighted I am to be here. I was a little curious who would be in this audience. I'm not sure if you're aware, but things are very nice outside, just about 500 yards from here. Then I walked in and everybody was throwing socks at each other, and I thought, now I'm really confused. I feel out of place. I've got on both underwear and socks. And I am massively intimidated following William Ivey Long, one of my great heroes. I have done a lot of work at both the College of William and Mary and at the University of North Carolina, both of which claim William as among their 3 or 4 most accomplished graduates. So it's pretty significant to get on 2 universities' list. I wish that I could say, like he did, that 95% of the issues that I work on when I go to sleep, I know how to solve them in the morning. I do not know that. I even wish I could tell you that Andy Griffith drove me here, but I can't say that either. I begin, though, with the sign of the times, pleasant or not. I work for the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, but I do not speak for it. If I did, it would perhaps be saying very different things. The university I love is thrilled when I give it ample opportunity to distance itself from me, so I am happy to do that now. I'm actually beginning to think it's not a bad truce, after all, given all the academic scandals, athletic scandals we have had at Carolina. I don't speak for them, and they don't speak for me. I don't speak for the university, but I did want you to know that I called and got special dispensation from the chancellor this morning to wear this blue shirt today. It's my job, too, to change the mood, sadly, I think, and to address by what is, I think, by any measure, North Carolina's greatest challenge, though it is never discussed by either political party in a tacit agreement of silence, the sin of immense poverty, immense great plenty, tough subject, lousy duty, unpleasant. I'll march in nonetheless. Right now, this afternoon, this beautiful afternoon, in the richest nation on earth, the richest nation in human history, we have more poor people than at any moment in our country's long story. More in the nation, more in North Carolina, more in Raleigh, certainly more here at the edge of eastern North Carolina. 50 millions nationwide, 16% of us across the country, nearly a quarter of our kids, almost 30% of all African Americans, Latinos, and Native Americans. And we are, even if just barely, in the South, the native home of American poverty, where we have more poor people and more political leaders who are utterly untroubled by it than the rest of the land. 10 of the country's poorest 12 states are southern, though generally 16% of Americans live in poverty. In Mississippi, it is 23%, in Louisiana 22%, Arkansas 20%, Georgia 20%, South Carolina 19%, Texas 18%, North Carolina 18%. The former Confederate states set the gold standard in American economic deprivation. We also lead the nation in those without health care coverage of any kind. Here, Texas paves the way with an astonishing 26% without health care coverage. But Louisiana at 22%, Florida 21%, South Carolina 21%, Georgia 20%, North Carolina 20%, Mississippi 20%. We all give the Longhorns a spirited run for their money. Rick Perry must be proud. Still, oddly, we are the states here in the South that most strongly opposed to stimulus funding, to health care reform, to the expansion of Medicaid. Our people would benefit the most from such programs, maybe not the right ones. That's a mouthful, I know. Demoralizing, depressing. And I didn't mean to start you out just with hard blows. I don't want you to think, though, that it's all bad news. There is a different cast, a second lens. I read a few months back in the New York Times, during the harder throes of the recession, that Gucci high-end sales last year rose 25%. Yves Saint Laurent came in close behind at 23%. BMW more than doubled its quarterly profits. Sales of BMW's S-Class sedan, that apparently cost over $200,000 an automobile, jumped 17%. Sadly, Neiman Marcus flatly sold out nationwide of something called Christian Louboutin Bianca platform pumps at $1,200 a pair. Now, I may have mispronounced that. I asked my wife, and thank Jesus she didn't know how to pronounce it either. But in the same report, it indicated that Walmart had just begun selling smaller packages because its shoppers don't have enough cash on hand to buy multi-packs of toilet paper. All of this in the nation that brags the most in its Declaration of Independence, in its Constitution, in its daily pledges of allegiance, brags the most about equality and justice and dignity for all, brags the most, and among the advanced countries does the least. So that despite all of our boasts and our promises, in fact, we have allowed ourselves to become the richest, the poorest, and the most unequal nation in the world. In North Carolina, it's worse. 18% of us, some 1.7 million, are officially poor. Over 1 in 4 of our children. 41% of our children of color. Let that sink in for just a minute. A simple declarative sentence that shames us as a people, or it ought to. North Carolina has one of the country's fastest rise in poverty rates. A decade ago, we were 26th, just a little bit better than average among the states. Now we're 11th, speeding past the competition. We also have seen over that same decade one of the steepest increases in the ranks of the uninsured of any state. And so we kicked 500,000 people off of Medicaid. 2 million of us in this state are classified by the federal government as hungry, over 20%. Nearly 622,000 of North Carolina children don't get enough to eat. Greensboro, North Carolina is the country's second hungriest city. Asheville is 9th. Feeding America reports that for children under 5, we have the country's second highest food insecurity rate, just a shade behind Louisiana. A 2011 study deemed Winston-Salem America's worst city for childhood food hardship. It seems astonishing to me that one could be governor of a state and never even mention as a concern that we have the second highest number of hungry babies. What does it take to become a priority? A national report 3 months ago named Roanoke Rapids and Lumberton 2 of the 3 poorest cities in the United States. Robeson County has America's 3rd highest food stamp participation rate. We have statewide over 9,000 homeless veterans, many fresh from our nation's battlefields. Last month, a massive Harvard study found that Charlotte has the worst economic mobility of any major city in the United States. 50th out of 50. If you are born poor there, you are more apt to stay that way than anywhere else in America. If you are born poor in Charlotte, Harvard recommends, I suppose, that you move. But even these statistics are only that. They're just data, dry, bloodless numbers, deadly figures. They don't convey the face and the reality of wrenching poverty in a land of great wealth, which is our own. It's not like talking through the night with scores of the 1,100 or so Tar Heels waiting all night long outside in Fayetteville beside the Civic Center, hoping to receive free dental care at a remarkable medical mission held 3 months ago. When asked repeatedly when they'd last seen a dentist, the disproportionately black throng would answer 10 or 20 or 30 years ago. Sure, it hurts a ton, but who can afford to see a dentist? Still, hundreds had to be turned away. And although last year we were able to sustain 11 such free clinics across Carolina, this year organizers could only afford 5. And it's not like meeting with some of the 250 or so wounded souls unable to be accommodated by overburdened local shelters, living in the otherwise bucolic woods of Hickory in makeshift lean-tos, cardboard shanties, ragged tents, until the police push them along, shredding their tents as deterrent, their only possessions. Only a few hundred yards from the sprawling mansions and churchyards which accompany them, in a scene that Dickens would have neither the gall nor the imagination to invent. A young woman explaining to us through her tears, "I know I have to get used to this, but I've never even been camping before." And it's not like speaking candidly with healthcare workers in Rocky Mount, explaining that they bend the rules to place oxygen in the home of their impoverished and incapacitated patients in order to make it tougher under state law to shut off water and power they can't afford. Or talking with the 70-year-old black woman from Winton who drives the school bus morning and afternoon, twice a day, every day, in order to get needed resources to pay for her medicine and therapy for a wounded husband. You know her. She is among North Carolina's lazy poor. Or the young, brilliant black mother from over here in Halifax County who graduated from UNC, moved back home, lost her job, eventually lost her housing and her sense of hope, and feared losing the far more important battle with her young son against peer pressure about the importance of going to school. How could you prove that by what's happened to you, Mom? Or the daughter in Wilson who frets for her 62-year-old father with heart disease, who couldn't get in to see a doctor unless he could come up with $400 that he owes and has no prospects for. And she fears every day the call, and we couldn't decide who carried the greater burden, the daughter or the father. Or in Hendersonville, where in a police chase for unarmed black men, alleged to have stolen a computer game, over 50 bullets were fired by law enforcement officers into a half a dozen houses, even the church where we met a few days later. A grandmother explained, weeping, that if she and her 4-year-old granddaughter hadn't hit the floor quickly enough, shots coming through the window would have killed them, something that would never occur in a white neighborhood in North Carolina. So that the young mother would say, when they shot into all those houses, they wounded all of us because they said our lives didn't matter. And how else could it be understood? The frank truth is, if the exclusions and indignity of North Carolina and American poverty are right, then our Constitution is wrong. If the debilitations of those locked at the bottom are acceptable, then our scriptures are wrong. If these denials of equal citizenship and humanity are permissible, then we pledge allegiance to a cynical illusion, not to a foundational creed. And I think we know it. It's like Lyndon Johnson said one time, we may not know everything, but we know the difference between chicken shit and chicken salad. This work addressing the yawning chasm between our words and our deeds is, not to put too grand a point on it, the work of our national soul, the measure of our national character. We could wish it weren't as challenging or as lonely or as uphill or as unappreciated as it is. We could wish there weren't such powerful forces arrayed against it. But sometimes under daunting challenge, it is helpful to think of those who have gone before. I am guessing that Fannie Lou Hamer didn't do an opinion poll before she started the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, and Rosa Parks didn't conduct a focus group before she sat down for freedom. I'm pretty sure that Cesar Chavez Didn't ask if it would be convenient or lauded or universally approved when he launched his famous hunger strike. He said instead, si se puede. This is not the first time that people of good heart have been called upon to struggle for justice in North Carolina against the odds. We are called to it. It is our defining mission. It's our defining mission because somewhere we read, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all are created equal. And somewhere we read of one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And somewhere we read that history will judge us on the extent to which we've used our gifts to lighten and enrich the lives of our fellows. And somewhere we read that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And somewhere we read, imagine this, maybe we ought to believe the things we teach our children. Believe them and make them real. And somewhere we read, of course, that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And somewhere most of the people in this room read, whenever you did these things for the least of these, you did them for me. And that same group read, you reap what you sow. And somewhere we read that the pursuit of justice and the pursuit of happiness can be as one. They march not in opposite directions, but hand in hand. And somewhere we read, no, we are not satisfied. And we will not be satisfied till justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. Thank you very much for letting me join.